Hello, YouTubers. Traws here, back with more Satisfactory. It's been a little bit of time for me since I've actually recorded an episode. I actually had a business trip last week, and the videos you saw were pre-recorded. But I'm back now and continuing to work on my base here at my second factory, where we're doing it for Shack News. Sun is just setting, but that's okay. I want to show you what I've done, some work on the inside of the factory, or I should say the bottom of the factory. Uh, did quite a bit of work here, but not too much to actually show for it. But it's basically some improvements for future work, I think. So we're just running over here. This is basically my factory area, basically where I was building everything to build this second factory where we are producing things as, let's say at a really large scale. I'm producing 90 motors a minute, 24 modular frames, 24 supercomputers, 200 nobilisks. These are all per minute, and when I'm done with the nobilisks, the 200 nobilisks are then turned into 800 cartridges a minute. And of course, now that our nuclear power facility is all done, we can get onto some of the other new things that bauxite has brought us. You can see our nuclear power facility is running great. We're basically using 1/100th of what we're producing right now, but not everything is turned on. We got lots of trains driving around, but we're not producing anything, so they're basically just filling up, or they are filled up and just can't unload because, hey, that's filled up too. So it feels like just a few episodes ago to me, but I know it's probably been quite a few, where we only had a Factory 2 PAX station, that's personal access train, and a oil drop-off train, which was bringing rubber and plastic from the Western Isles. Since then, we've added quite a few number of trains. I believe this copper drop-off was last time. Let's say it was recent. And over here we had some quartz and limestone. No, limestone is back here behind the packs, and you should be bauxite over here. Yeah. So we want to make batteries and turbo motors. But we're going to need some more materials to do that. And they're not close. So I kind of made this like half step here for a station just so we could, fit another station, but we needed more. And you can probably see a slope here. An episode or two ago, we put in 8 lines, and 8 belts, let's say, of materials to make the alclad aluminum plates. And I had to move them down a bit to this squash floor, which is... Here's the lines. They were kind of up here. So this is literally just above the stations down here. And it gives me just enough room up here for 3 more 6-car stations. This was the floor where we were bringing in trucks with plastic and rubber. In fact, that is still all set up. Once the saving lag here goes away. There we go. So I still have the truck unloading system. The floor extended maybe to about here, and or maybe a little further. The rest of it was empty because actually it extended right to the end of this wall. Because I had never intended to build my factory all the way, but when I started building like the first floor, I realized it needed a little more room. That's where we were smelting using the copper plus iron ingot smelter, and to get 60 of them in, which is basically 2 rows of 30, I needed more room. So this area here was never fully filled in. And in fact, I only put in like 4 truck stations worth. So by cutting off these plates, or the foundations I should say, right where I finished the build, I could fit in a train station with 6 cargo stations, and squeezing them in as tightly as I could, I actually have 3 of them, only one of which I am currently using, just set up. So I had to reroute a lot of belts, move some belts down, move some other belts around. I put in this nice big ramp to get up here. Because of this station here, I can't fit in one. In fact, I had to, you can see I had to drop down this height of 2 walls just to fit in these stations, because they're apparently a lot taller than the truck stations. The truck stations, I think, fit in 3 wall height, where the train stations need a 5 wall height. Had to reroute this coal line. But yeah, so the trains can come up here, and I have 3 stations, one of which is going to be for plastic, because we're going to need plastic for the batteries. In fact, let's look at what we need here. I hope you're not the batteries. You're not the batteries. You're the batteries. So batteries. We're making alclad aluminum sheets. We did that previously. So that's basically all of this stuff over to here. So all we really need for batteries is we need some wire, we need some sulfur, and we need some plastic. Originally, I had planned on making, well, 50-ish batteries per minute. And then I looked at the amount of aluminum sheets. And with the amount of aluminum sheets for the batteries and the amount of aluminum sheets for turbo motors, we weren't making enough. So I originally lowered that to 25, but 25 per minute. If I do per minute and say 25 though, it's not actually very much materials. So I found out if I go to machine, well, if I put it back to 50, which was what I was originally planning, we need about 9. But then you see, hey, that's, some of these numbers are pretty close to what a belt can handle, and I kind of settled on, well, if I do 60, that's a single belt worth. That takes 11. It would be really nice if that was 12. We could do 2 rows of 6. And I'm not sure what that works out to be exactly. I don't think it's 64. 68. 68. 67. Something. 67 and a fraction. So let's just say we want 12 machines. So that's 450 sulfur, which is what the Mark IV belts were originally. They've been since bumped up to 480. 200 plastic is relatively easy, and I mean, we're making a full belt of alclad aluminum sheets right now, full Mark V belt, which is 780. So that will still leave us 600 for the turbo motors, and additionally, there's no use for batteries right now, so we're gonna make a full, industrial container full of it, and then maybe not ever use them again unless some use for batteries are made. So I think overusing is okay because we're not really going to use this stuff all the time. Speaking of stuff we're not going to use all the time, earlier I mentioned, hey, we're making nobilisks and cartridges like crazy and we're not using them. And those use a lot of sulfur. Since we're not generally producing them, we could borrow that sulfur. So that's where we're going to get the sulfur. We have this done. That just leaves wire. One of the first things we're making, though, is the motors. We're making 90 per minute. And that we basically just took a whole belt of iron and running it through the iron wire alternate recipe. So we actually have bonus extra wire left over from that. And that would easily supply the wire. So the only thing we really need is plastic. But we're using nearly, I'm saying, every oil on the map. For some reason, this bugged out and I can't drag it around. But we're using all this oil. We're using all this oil. This oil is being brought back to our original factory. This oil is powering all these fuel generators over here. These oils are making our rubber. This oil's producing fuel. We could possibly reuse these, but if you look at these oils, most of these up here are impure. Impure. There are 3 pure, though, or 3 normal and 2 pure. But we're only taking oil out of them as if they're impure. So, or we were. If you can see around here, actually I can zoom in for some reason. We now have some more oil refineries here that are now producing plastic. And if you can see the purple line here, we have a train line that goes over. This first one we actually weren't ever using. We were getting enough rubber from the rest. But so this is producing plastic, and now we're also producing plastic over here. So I also put in a station here and here. If we like this, we have a conveyor. Yeah, that's the conveyor line right there. So we could replace the conveyor line with a rubber train, but I'm not doing that right now because I'm guessing we're going to be using, the 2 remaining stations for other things. But just in case, it's not yet hooked up to fill those stations, but it would be easy to put in a train and have the excess go into the train. So let's take a look. The train should be... Yes, the train is waiting here. The one problem is now we have another train, and this train's made a few trips, and somehow all its cars were in front of it, or partially in front of it, and some went other places. So hopefully they'll fix the train bug. I'm still getting some audio issues occasionally, but for now it sounds like it's working okay. Let's remove this end of line, and we'll... No, we were rolling backwards. Also, I'm probably going to need some health at some point because the train does go through a bit of a gas cloud. This is the turnoff to go back up there. It kind of goes around here. We're going to come down here. Head out here, and hopefully, all right, we're gonna turn down this first turnoff, which is to the quartz cave, and yeah, it looks like things are working right. We're turning, that goes into the quartz cave. We're gonna turn right here. There's a turnabout here, just in case your train gets routed wrong. You go across these little bridges. I felt this, even though it was longer, would be better than a really steep, you know, turn out of there and into this canyon. So there's the belts of rubber, and there's also one belt of fuel. The rubber comes from where we're going to be picking up the plastic. We're near there. The fuel is one of the things over here is making excess fuel, which was powering the trucks. So coming up here, this is where the gas is. You can see some of the poison gas rocks, and we're gonna hopefully, let's get our nuts out and eat a little bit here. Yeah, the train goes really slow because there's this hill, and then there's immediately a station, so it's going really slow here. We're probably not even going to load here because this is already full. So this is just fills the first car, this station. This is only an impure node, so it only gets... Well, we're overclocked, and I think we're only getting 120 oil barrels per minute, which turns into something like 90 plastic per minute. But yeah, we're all full, so it's not gonna... Whichever one of these cars is this first car. We have 6 cars on this train. We're only using actually 5 of them at the moment. This next station, which we're gonna roll through, basically there's 3 belts of rubber, each at, well, I believe they're 450. So we have, each belt is going into 2 cargoes. So we have one there. Here we have the plastic station, which is what we're going into, and there's another rubber station over here, which does the middle 2. All these refineries here, there's 8 refineries in a row there. There's 8 refineries in 2 rows of 4 over here, all making plastic, and they're filling these 4 cargo stations here. That leaves one more cargo station that's unused on this train. I might be using it soon for more coal, which is something we're also kind of low on. Nothing fill up again because they're all full. And before we can turn around, there is one more rubber station to fill the last 2 cars from the first belt, which is made down here. You can see there's only one belt here, which could be easily routed into these 2, which would be the last 2 cargoes. it comes from those down there. So now we should be heading directly back to the factory. And hopefully getting through the gas much quicker this time, so I won't have to eat as many of these barrel nuts. Yeah, this took some time, and especially the reworking of all the stations and the tracks under the factory. I thought I had it all set up, but then like the train said, "Oh, I can't get to the destination," and I had to figure out that one of the switch tracks stopped working, and well, that's no fun. Yeah, staying on top doesn't always work out right. Well, it looks like we're having saving lag again, so I'm probably going to make a cut, and I'll be back in a minute when I'm back in the factory. Okay. Here we are, back in the factory. I believe this is the plastic train pulling in here, and apparently it got some other trains, cars in with it as well. So, we need to, or we want to make batteries right now. So the batteries use a little over 200 plastic per minute when going at full blast. Each of these should be getting 90 plastic per minute, the way I have it set up. So for reasons that don't make sense anymore, I was skipping the first one and taking the next three. That leaves the first with plastic and the second to last with plastic, and this one, as I said earlier, currently doesn't have anything. I'm not sure why I actually decided to do that. It made sense at the time, but it really doesn't anymore. So this should be 270 per minute, but I'm not going to limit it to a Mark III belt. Let's have a Mark IV belt, just so we can unload a bit faster if needed. Now this goes under the track here, because that's the easiest way to route it. Comes this way, again under here. These are potentially other belts from the other stations. And they're coming all the way over here. Even though you can't see them, they're here. Come on, level of detail. There we go. Oops. Come on. There we go. And we're going to come up here. Here we're going to use a Mark V belt. Just because we can, basically. And yeah, there's room for 5 other belts here, at least. We're going to have that go up as, not as high as possible. We're going to have it connect up there. Which isn't quite as high as possible. Alright. Let's just see if we can't land right there. And there we go. We know that's lined up now. And there that goes, way up into the sky. Let's head up there. Hopefully the train noise will be almost non-existent up there. Yeah, here you can see the sulfur and coal, which we're using, I believe, mostly for the explosives, the nobilisks. So we'll be borrowing some of that sulfur in just a minute. Okay. So here we are. This is our battery production. And yeah, 12 of these kind of fit neatly up here. I could probably actually fit 2 more, but at that point, certain things overrun belt sizes, and 12 worked out nicely, let's say, and gave us enough room to have belts coming around the side if we need to bring other things up on this side and kind of like belt them around. Because I'm kind of hoping to fit the turbo motors on here as well. So, each of these needs 15 aluminum sheets per minute, 45 wire, 37.5 sulfur, and almost 17 plastic per minute. And we have an arrangement of belts. I won't say it's a nice arrangement. But yeah, we got belts here that will bring stuff, and we're able to, the bottom belt goes straight in. The second belt slopes nicely, but the others we had to use conveyor lifts and have them kind of fit in. So the top line here will be plastic, and the next line will be the alclad aluminum sheets. So let's hook those up. I'm just going to use a Mark V belt because it's easiest. It goes down to 270 here, though. Theoretically, we could branch off of this and go up further higher if we need to. So here's our plastic. The alclad aluminum sheets are right down here, one floor down. This is where we made them last time. And I have a Mark V belt coming out here, splitting to 2 Mark V belts. Mostly because, hey, this, like I said, this floor up here isn't going to be running all the time. Let's put in a wall, and then a conveyor wall, and get our conveyor lift up here. Okay, we'll do another. You're 270, even though you don't need to be. All right. That should be good. Here is our sulfur. Let's show you where it comes from. So our coal and sulfur here go into this floor to make the compacted coal, which I think comes up over here. Maybe not. comes up over here. And that gets combined with more sulfur to make the black powder. This is a full belt, or it's at least a 450 belt. So I put a splitter right in here, because as you see, this ran... it ran once. Well, maybe not once, but it ran enough so that we could fill that with cartridges and fill this with nobilisks, and I'm thinking I've taken a stack of each. So, you know, this isn't really being used, this sulfur, so we can borrow it, because I don't think the batteries will really be used, except for maybe making certain buildings or certain vehicles or something like that in the future. So that comes up here, makes a nice little turn in. Because of the way I branched it, I wasn't sure that it would fit right in here, so hey, this works. And you're a Mark V belt, so we'll just take you right here. And then that will come down. You know, we split everything here, and like, I know we only need 270 going each way. So the Mark V should be backed up. Except that we're not, like I said, it was probably a Mark IV belt, so there's some gaps, so it won't back up. The two 270s should be enough. The last thing we need is wire. And are you my? You are my wire. Great. I remember correctly. So this is the floor where we're making motors, and they're being produced over here 90 a minute. But both the rotors and the stators were using the recipe that uses lots of wire. So we are bringing in, I don't know how many belts of iron, and using the iron wire recipe, like this whole side. I mean, both, you know. Here's... It looks like it's at least two 450 belts. Anyway, so like some of this goes to stators and the other goes to rotors, but we were overproducing by a bit. And because these make 67.5 per minute, that's a weird number, but it does happen to go into 270 evenly, 4 times in fact. So you can see the way we have this hooked up is we have basically 4 of these constructors hooked up into a 270 line. So we got 270 going into here, 270 going into this one, 270 going into this one, and this one is, well, it's also a 270 line, but it is feeding, I believe, 2 of the assemblers, the way things worked out. So it is a little less than 270. It's probably 180 a minute, even when the motors are going full. So we're gonna use a lot of this. We can't... This is approximately 1,000 a minute. And... well, we can't put all of this on one belt. Looks like we got some saving lag again. Any moment now. There we go. But if we put two of the 270s and the 180 together, that's about 720. And how are you? Alright. So, let's do that. Not really sure. I didn't plan this part out yet. Let's say. So, let's put a merger here. And I have a lot of Mark V belts, so I'm just going to use that here. So this should be approximately 720 a minute. Too steep, huh? It's not pretty, but it works. And if we just check back here, we need 540. So, yeah, we could have probably just done, no, not quite to the 270s, but we'll have excess, and we'll use that excess in the future, I think. Especially if, as I'm hoping, the batteries don't run all the time. You know, I probably should have came out this door over here. So we now need to get this all the way up. And this I didn't really plan for. Except that it needs to be done. Let's land. I said land. Right here. It is obviously that window. And we're gonna flip you around and go up as high as we can there. And we're gonna take these stairs up a few flights. Okay, that was a little too high, but that's fine. Gonna put you facing forward again. Alright, that's just short. That's fine. That's great, in fact. Let's just put a platform out here temporarily. Mark 5 belt, and that goes neatly right in there. And that should be all we need. These things should come on momentarily. And so we have 12 of these. Let's do the exact math. 12 times 5.625, 67 and a half batteries per minute. Now, obviously, that's not, that's if other things aren't running. Well, specifically, that's if we're not making the nobilisks and cartridges, but those were already the way they worked. Like, we couldn't be making supercomputers and the nobilisks at the same time. But we can make this and supercomputers at the same time. It's just that the way we're making the nobilisks, we're using some of the crystal oscillators that the supercomputers normally use. So here comes our first batteries. And we got Mark 1 belts down here, but somewhere here we start using Mark 2 belts, so we can fit the 67 and a half per minute. And that's just gonna fill this up. And this is a bit short, I guess, of an episode, but I don't have anything else planned except looking at this beautiful landscape here. Let's take that out of our hands. Yeah, so with the work I did underneath the factory, that took a lot of time. But hopefully it pays off in that now we have more plastic coming in, and we have 2 other stations that we can use for stuff in the future. The next thing planned also happens to be the last thing planned. Is turbo motors. That's basically the only thing we're not producing here at this second factory. And I guess before I end the episode, let's briefly take a look at turbo motors. So that is, well, it's here. I went over this an episode or so ago. But we're making motors at 90 per minute, so we can use 88 of them to make turbo motors. And the only thing we really need at that point, well, we have the motors. We need AI limiters. We need stators, and we need radio control units. The radio control units need heat sinks. The heat sinks are wire, a lot of wire, and alclad sheets, which we have already. The wire, we have some extra iron that we're not currently using, that we can turn into wire. So that can be done. We have supercomputers. We're making 24 of them a minute, so 15 can be done. Stators are more wire and some steel pipe, which again we have iron that we're not using, that's currently being produced but not used. It basically just leaves the AI limiters. And these are circuit boards and quick wires. So that that may take some work making these. We'll have to make circuit boards, which themselves take other things. But the rest of this, like the motors are done. Stators are relatively easy. Heat sinks are relatively easy, um, which then makes the radio control units relatively easy. It's just getting the space for everything. So the floor here is probably going to be dedicated to wire and maybe the AI limiters. And then we'll have another floor that actually makes the stators, the heat sinks, the radio control units, and then finally the turbo motors. But that's going to have to be next time, because it's going to take some work to do that, and I want to get an episode out. So I'll say thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time with more Satisfactory. See you then.